What is up, everybody? This is Edward back with another video. Shout out to a couple of people. Obviously, you all see the thumbnail. So, obviously, congratulations to Kevin Samuels for hitting 100. I saw him when he was at like 98, like 99.8. I always like to congratulate people's success, and I really mean that. That's why I put in the thumbnail. He's not even gonna say that because obviously AMS really came through, but he's never technically been like manosphere. Stephen Clip Scales obviously was in there, but they ain't never claimed it like that. At least that I know of. But no, they shout out, and then O'Shea is really close as well. And and I'm sure he'll have that King Uganda will be 1,000 sooner or later because quite frankly, I mean really if he wanted to actually do the collab thing, it would definitely be there. It'll be a lot closer. But he's I guess allowing it to build organically. So he'll be there sooner or later, and it's great. I know you got Angry Man that does like really strong views as well. So you're gonna have it's good to have kind of that mold being broken, especially as it's good to see the growth. And it's good to remember, shout out to Solon Black. He's somebody just listened to a video with him when he was talking about Danica. He was endorsing her, at least most of, her talking points. And he was a guy that read me into the manosphere. I actually came into manosphere via him, not BGS. And then I kind of came into the manosphere kind of as we know it through BGS, but the manosphere in general, I came in through Solon Black, and Solon Black definitely used to be on BGS and shit. And I don't think I would have found BGF is Solon. No. I found BGS without Solon Black, but Solon Black being on there kind of confirmed it for me. So yeah, it's really, really good, and congratulations. And I see a lot of up and coming stuff. You look at Ty City and his setup, good setup. Same thing with Bernard. Not only his setup, but it's kind of the talk show type of stuff he talks about. Really good. He does it. I'm not going to. I'll say this, and this isn't me trying to start shit, but to me, I kind of think, I don't want to say feel, but him and Gab are like two sides of the same coin. But I think the difference is, and I don't know a lot about Gab, so I'm not going to act like I only know what he said and his interactions I've had and I've heard him have on here. But I think the fact that Bernard has been divorced, I think gives him more of a perspective on the reality of the shit versus like Gab. And when I think of Gab, I think of, I think of like Danica, the dude that Danica probably is like married to. And you have to understand that a lot of dudes, they can't jump outside the perspective of what they deal with. I mean, sometimes shit's just got to take a hit in their own battleship for them to realize, oh, we're in a war. And that's as far as I'm going to comment on that. But I'm saying, because I see a lot of similarities between Gab and Bernard, but see a lot of things that kind of has me always seem like I'm being a little bit combative towards Gab, and you don't find that towards Bernard, is because, quite frankly, because Bernard is not one of these go in guys either. But at the same time, he's a little bit more willing to call the bullshit out for what it is bullshit and not try to understand why a woman is on some bullshit. And I just want to point that out. Because these nuances do exist, and it's not just something I'm just making up because I want to be combative. But shout out to Gab. We're Instagram. I follow him, he follows me. So it is what it is. And one thing too is, if people want to project their narratives, I mean, the information is out here, and this is actually what this video is about. Appreciate that, Sam. I am appreciate that, NBA fan. I really do appreciate that. And before I jump into the main topic, because I was about to transition, but yeah, shout out to I definitely want the manosphere to expand. I mean, the Negro manosphere has obviously a sports section, category section. It's time to really start getting into more different stuff. I've had this idea called Red Pill Gossip. And obviously using gossip is kind of a feminine thing, but so I'll come up with a different name, but kind of like the terminology of Red Pill Gossip, which is basically what Jada Black does, which is kind of what O'Shea is doing right now. And obviously basically taking our Red Pill ideology and applying it to basically trending news. We already do it. It's just we don't actually do it in such a, we do it in more of a streaming type more than an upload type. And O'Shea is right when he talks about like uploading. There there is, if you get it going, it is something that can be very valuable, and quite frankly, it's less time consuming too. Um, so, when I hear what DJ Kuda says about the setup, and O'Shea says about, like, you got to take the, even if people don't like things that are being said, you have to really take that type of counsel and really take it to heart. That being said, like I said before, it just depends on what you're trying to get out of YouTube. And I've often had really back and forths because I've always used YouTube as a marketing platform and never really used it as like an actual, I've never considered myself a YouTuber. I've always been a nigga or a marketer that happens to use YouTube. Because I've never looked at YouTube to really generate a substantial amount of income as far as what YouTube would pay, as far as Google and super chats. I've always looked at it as a leverage for me to reach other people. And you'll see more of that down the road, sooner than later. But anyway, what I wanted to really talk about right now is marriage. So I was listening. It's a couple of people. You already know. You got Gabe A, Kevin. I was listening to Kevin, the one, I guess he remixed it in the Black Men Fear Marriage, and then he was kind of talking about, what certain people in the manosphere, well, not even, he didn't say the manosphere, but certain people in the chat, or there's a certain, minority that talks about black men, people aren't marrying, but at the end of the day, black men want to couple up. And it becomes this back and forth a little bit. And then, shout out to BGS has done the research. Erica Shonda has said this too about people want to couple up. And I really want to set the record straight on, this is my opinion, this is Edward Anderson's opinion, but this is an opinion based on my perspective of what I think most of the manosphere represents. Obviously, anybody can say I'm off base, I'm full of shit, whatever, but this is what I think it does based on what I've seen. Here's the reality of the situation. Most black men in this space are not, when I say, let me compare it. Most black men in this space are anti-tricking. Meaning, when you say tricking, they have a very reaction to it. Meaning, at the end of the day, you're less of a man if you do it. Whether they really get bothered about it or they use a lot of airtime about it, usually it just depends. But generally, even if they don't use airtime, the general consensus in a manosphere is if you're a dude that you're tricking, you fail. Like, if that, especially if that's what you're really doing. This is why even people that advocate for it tend to always have caveats. Now, as far as why I advocate for it, the reality is I've done sex tourism. I've not tricked in the United States. That's a fact. But I will say that I have it in my mind that if a female is wasting my time, my time is valuable. So as far as commodifying what she's worth, and take any feelings out of it, yeah, I do that. But as far as me actually giving a bitch money to fucking fuck, no, I haven't done that. And the reality is it'd be too expensive here. But as far as sex tourism, yes, I've done that. Is that all I do when I've gone overseas? No, but I have done it. And it's not necessarily in the ways that some people would think anyway, because there's a lot of varieties of how you can do that. Yachts, there's a lot of different stuff. But anyway, my point is, I wanted to make that point. Now, marriage, people are not necessarily like that. People could say that they don't believe black men should get married, but most people are not going to sit here and start clowning niggas to get married. Like, for instance, Gabe, Moses, George Macon. These are not dudes that they get clowned or they get called out. When niggas get married, like, nigga, you a simp ass nigga because you married. That never happens in the manosphere. Even when niggas are pissed off, that never happens. And that should tell you a lot, right? So there's and look, I understand why people can think this. I'm not saying when people say that certain people in the manosphere have an issue with marriage, I'm not saying they're pulling that out their ass. So let me say that right now. I can understand why people have that opinion because how hard people kind of go at it a little bit, at least to talking points. They don't go along with what the provincial wisdom is. But really what most black men, and obviously shout out to Ramil, where Ramil, is very, black men shouldn't get married and pumping up lifestyle. But at the same time, Ramil doesn't really say, no, I'm going to shame you for doing it. It only starts becoming calling you out when people start trying to push marriage, but not really give the caveat. It's not even caveats. What's obvious. Like, if you're trying to push marriage where you're trying to kind of shut down people having a conversation. And I've said this before and I'll say it again. I would love to have a conversation. I would love to see a channel about like, something like The Roommates, where somebody is married and somebody is divorced, and you have like an honest opinion on that. Somebody that's not married, that's been married and divorced, and somebody that is married, and really have a conversation about that. Because I think a lot of times we don't have that conversation as black men about what marriage is, what's expected, what you should expect, what are the benefits, what are liabilities in this market, what are liabilities importing a chick, what are liabilities dealing with somebody here. We don't get that. That conversation is not had. It's just really about, should you get married, should you not, and then the justification. And yes, I'm gonna say it again. Shout out to Glendon Cameron, because that video that he put out there, really going in detail of his marriage. I'm not saying that's indicative of all marriages, but him going through his experience, and then him talking about like protecting assets and stuff like that. And this wasn't a guy that had a lot of assets going into the marriage, but he had a lot of assets, as far as what he built up or he tried to do. These are things. These are things that are not talked about. And it's not about being pro-marriage or anti-marriage, because Glendon Cameron's not anti-marriage either. He's basically pro-protect your ass if you got something to protect. Even in the video, he was talking about being a corporate citizen. No, he was talking about, it was one video, he was talking about how to, about a prenup. And he said, there's no point in getting a prenup if you don't have any assets. Because at the end of the day, prenups are for assets you have going into the marriage. Prenups are not for assets that you get in a marriage. You can't prenup assets that you develop once you're in a marriage. Those assets have to be established. So like, for instance, if you're a basketball player, then that's an asset that you can bring. You can't protect assets that are created in a marriage. So if like Amazon was created after they got married, which it wasn't, but if it was, that couldn't be protected. Same thing. So, and that's if you have a prenup, this ironclad, right? And so that gives you, so when you then switch back to like Kevin Samuels and you hear some of the stuff he talks about being a high value man, and why he defines a high value man at 5 years, that starts to make a little bit more sense. Because if you're a guy where you just started bringing in some money, just because you got money doesn't, and look, I'm team having money, but just because you have money doesn't necessarily mean you have assets. And it takes time sometimes to build those assets or establish them. So obviously, when you've like made a certain amount of income over a certain amount of time, then that establishes, I hate to say residency, but that stuff is more seasoned. And I can understand why that's said. And that makes a lot more sense to the layman as to why that's said, versus people that want to just start hating out the gate, right? So, and by the way, these dudes are roughly all around the same age too. In their 51, 53, I believe, with Glendon. So the point is, and then going into so the point is, it when you look at least, because understand that the black manosphere is not the same as MGTOW. It's not. The black manosphere broke off and became its own thing. It started with Igmore, SYSBM, kind of broke off soon after that, but it became its own thing because black men never was on team no pussy. The Igmores are not team no pussy. SYSBM, these are the most closest thing to MGTOW that we have in the manosphere. And none of those groups have ever been team no pussy. They may have been team monk mode for a certain amount of time, like monk mode for like 6 months or something like that. But they've never been team no pussy, ever. That because black men had a visceral reaction to that. But what they have been is team don't get married, team punk and dump, team, they've been team that. Now, let me be very clear. If a black man wants to get married, that's their decision. I just saw I'm gonna post this in the community tab. I just saw, and I'm experimenting with something with resharing those damn stories on my community tab. So yeah, stay tuned with that. But anyway, I'm gonna post. It's a post. I follow a lot of quote channels. If you click on my follow thing on Instagram, you'll see that. For a variety of reasons, but the main one post that I saw on there is, it was something I think it came from SpongeBob SquarePants, where he said, something alluding to what happens if I break your trust, And then the other person said, trusting you was my decision. Proving me wrong is your choice. And that was a great thing. That was a great thing. And a great back quote. And as far as marriage goes, here's the thing, man. The job of the manosphere is not to tell niggas not to get married. The job of a manosphere is to make it is to basically make it so you can't say you didn't fucking know. You make it so where you can't say that you fell in love with that pussy and you let your dick get married and not your brain. That you got married on some simp shit and not on some legacy shit. Whatever you want to tell yourself as far as, oh, legacy, vibes, all this good shit. You can say that, but you know why you really got married. That's really what it's about. You can't say you didn't know. And a lot of guys are having their own conversation about it, and what happens is a lot of dudes will perceive that as oh, well, dudes are just outright, clowning niggas for getting married because they don't want to do shit, and being married is part of grown man shit, and they're just anti that. That's not the case. But at the same time, we all know that black men are most economically vulnerable. You can read a lot of great books, Think and Grow Rich, to say marriage is the most important decision you have to make. And quite frankly, what everybody agrees, whether they believe in marriage or not, is everybody agrees that black men shouldn't get married early. Anyway, y'all, appreciate that. Let me, NBA fan, let me see where y'all, let me read y'all super chats. Somebody hit me with some super chat. Let's see shit. Hold on. So Roger Report, appreciate that, man. I've noticed that people honestly have a problem with divorce. They may say that getting married is bad, but they say that in relation to divorce. So marriage is good, but is divorce bad? I personally think marriage is great. And then the Gold Eagle 99 says, would setting up a trust fund while you're single successful man be a good thing before you get married as far as protect your assets for marriage? I'm gonna tell you, man, I don't know. That's a great question. In my opinion, you need to go talk to Glendon and ask him that. And well, you know why? Because Glendon has successfully got the court to basically honor the agreement that he had with his woman when it comes to child support. So he knows a hell of a lot more than me. I'm not married. I haven't been divorced. I'm not a lawyer. So when it comes to that shit, I'm gonna tell you go to experts. I mean, if it's something I kind of think I got some things to point you in the right direction, sure. But when it comes to that shit, it's not that I don't not understand trust. I don't understand stuff in relation to that. So, because even another thing Glennon said in that video, and I posted in the community tab, is he said a prenup does nothing for child support. And that makes sense because child support, because number one, the kid is either not born or the kid is or if a kid is born, it's already on the books. So there's no way to really do that. So, but yes, I will say Glendon did mention trust in some form, but you have to create that shit in a certain way. And the reason why I'm pointing you in his direction is because he's talking about this thing about corporate citizenship and how he wants to teach other people how to be corporate citizens. That's like a mission he's starting to have. And understanding that paperwork is how you understand how to make that shit happen. So that's a loaded question, but it's a great question. But that's where you go to get it. But my thing, me personally, I'm not gonna tell a black man that says he wants to get me. And I have seen situations in real time more than a few times in my workplace of dudes that have stressed their ass out because they have mismanaged marriages. I will give you a perfect example, and this is not indicative of everything. I'm just saying. I had a dude. He was like, we were the same age actually, but he looked older than me. Like people just thought he was older, and I'm dudes tend to think I'm older than what my age is, or at least back in the day. I've been 30 for like 10 years. It seems like for real though. I don't know if it's the mustache, whatever. Anyway, long story short, I was a sales manager at the time, and he was an operations manager, and technically he outranked me. But it was like one of these weird things where I was like, it was kind of like he outranked me, but because of what we did, he couldn't really tell me what to do because I didn't report to him. And long story short, we like the managers got a bonus, and I was kind of in control of that bonus based on like what the site did and all that. And he always would hound me about this fucking bonus. But the thing that used to get on my nerves is I'm like, look, man, you want to be everybody's fucking friend as far as the people that works for you, but you want to put the pressure on me for this fucking bonus. And one day his team was really fucking up. His whole he controlled like 85 people, and it was only 4 managers, so he was a quarter of it. We brought him in there, and my boss happened to be in the site. He was housed in he ran multiple sites, but he was in my site, so I can always go directly to him. I had directly access to him, and we had a meeting. And he came out with it like talk about his marriage and all that. And dude just got married, and then my boss like really went at him. He said, "Nigga," because he was married too, and he said I was gonna leave, but he told me to stay. And he told me, he said, "What? I know what you did." And I sat there. He said, "Just sit here and listen." And I said, "All right." So I sat and kind of in the corner with just them because like he wanted to talk to himself, but he still wanted me in the room. He's like, "I know what you did." He's like, "What are you talking about?" He said, "You went and you had that Chrysler 300 that you had pretty much paid for, and your dumb ass went and got that Jaguar XLR." I'm talking about he got one of the new shits. He got the new shit at the time. It was like 2000. It was new. So you already know what that cost when it was new. And he said, "You did that right after you got married." And I said, "You fucked up. And I'm going to tell you why you fucked up. Because you basically set an expectation that now you created so much stress that you got to maintain that expectation. Because people are either going to see this thing improving or declining. They're, and staying the same, quite frankly, you can only stay the same for so long, right? So you sat here, you got this thing, and now if you riding clean, she gonna be riding clean. That's another thing too. Me, well, you like, well, you gotta escalate. Well, yeah, you damn right I gotta escalate. But guess what? What do you know where I get my fucking clothes? I get my clothes with good fucking will. And this shit was funny as hell because a lot of women was trying to fuck him in the site, and and they were legit trying. I'm talking about like even some managers, like so he was one of them niggas that if he wanted to, he could get passed around the pussy roller coaster, like pretty much at will if he really wanted. And everybody saw it. It wasn't like they were doing it on low, like they was like be open. But anyway, long story short, and he admitted that it wasn't just the car couldn't get around. The car was like $60,000. I remember that, and it was like, damn, nigga, because you had a Chrysler 300C that you had just paid for. And I said, so you sitting there trying to make because it was something where he was like lying on me, like he was making me look like the bad guy. So he had people looking at me like supervisors that I worked with were looking at me sideways. And he was like, you making him, it's harder because even if these people leave your team, they still feel salty because you're telling them what I was telling him. Meaning my job was to make it so they were able to do their job in the thing I was responsible for. So my job was to really let him what supervisors were really doing their job and not as far as moving this number. Because I didn't have the ability to correct them. They had to do it and I wasn't like, and the thing about it is I wasn't even telling them everything these niggas was doing. I was really like low key letting them get away with murder. And I was sitting there working overtime because I was able to get paid because they wouldn't put me on salary, but I was working their ass on overtime. So I didn't care making that money. But he was basically making it seem like I was the bad guy because he didn't want to be the bad guy. And I didn't even know that was happening until later on. But long story short, the point is he set that up to fail because of his mindset for how he see the conversation never really happened as far as how you manage that shit. You just fall in love with the bitch and then you think it's happily ever after. And a lot of dudes are goofy that way too about it. And my point is, we're not even going to talk about the 80% divorce. We're not even going to talk about the fact that a lot of these bitches don't really want to get married. We're not even, well, it's not they don't want to get married. They don't want to be wives. They want to be married while single or single while married. We're not even going to talk about these midlife crises that these women are going through, and then they just turn that into a thought shit if they can. They start hitting the wall and they start turning thoughts because they think, oh, I'm not going to be able to do this no more. Or they talk about they were married young. And so my point is, it comes back to it's a whole bunch of troll niggas that just hope that marriage is declining and hope that marriage is just hurt because they can't get married or they don't want to get. That's not what the manosphere isn't really reflective of that at all. You can look at any of the pillars. You look at any of the pillars of the man. You don't really see Obsidian talking that shit. O'Shea ain't talking that shit. Hell, Angry Man was just talking about like maybe a week ago about how he's always been about coupling up on some man shit, and then rattling off everybody that really fucks with him like close. As far as different things he's done that's been in relationships, or at least not necessarily married but relationships. Um, and I'm not, and again, this is not about me sitting here making a video saying these people are wrong. That's not what this is, because I understand why they get what they get. Because a lot of times it seems like folks are anti-marriage the way they rail against it. And the reality of it is, you have the mainstream is. So when you look at what some of the work BGS has done, the policy is designed to basically allow women to have kids and do whatever the fuck they want to do. Obviously, the government saves more money the more dudes volunteer. The more dudes volunteer, shout out to Raj Report. Y'all need to check that out later today at 9 o'clock. Volunteer oppression. I'm sure I'm going to bring that up. He gave me a super chat. I'm going to bring that up a couple of times. They want you to volunteer for it. And here's the thing. The less you protect yourself, the easier it is. That's what Divorce Corp was about. And to be fair, BGS did the numbers. It said, single motherhood is stabilized at about like 60. It went from 73 down to 68. So it looks like it's going to pretty much cap out at 7 out of 10 kids. 7 out of 10 kids born are going to be out of wedlock. And you're starting to see other groups start to catch up to that. That's what his numbers was about too. So it's a policy thing too. It's not just, black women, black female fuckery. It also says that you necessarily are not going to get away from it just because you just lead a black community. So not necessarily telling you to stay, but I'm just saying what it is. My point is, what really doesn't get said is, from a lot of dudes that preach marriage, they don't ignite a lot of things address the marriage. It becomes about it just becomes, oh, well, you're just going at it. I'm like, all you got to do is acknowledge what the fuck we saying, and then actually have some tangible positives as to why people say, look, I believe marriage is this because obviously are you bringing kids and blah, 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 but I acknowledge all of that. And the reality is, as a black man, you're going to have to protect yourself if you get married. And because we pretty much all agree that black men shouldn't get married before they're 30. That's pretty much universal. If you agree, if you're even open to black men getting married, and even still, this is what people don't understand about the pump and dump shit. You can pump and dump and then turn around and get married. I mean, non-black men do that all the time. They'll pump and dump black women and then it's time to have a baby. Khaled did that. When it's time to have a baby, they have a baby with their own. They do that shit all the time. It's only with black men that black men believe that your sex is directly tied. Who you have sex with is tied to your loyalty, because that's what you've been taught by females. And so if dudes want to get married, get married. I mean, you're gonna do it anyway. I'm not here to sell black men on not getting married. I personally don't give a fuck. Because if the truth be told is, that shit is a personal decision. If I decide to do it, I'm not going to give a fuck about what you niggas say. I know I'm going to protect myself. I remember, what was that bitch ass nigga? You know what I'm saying? Bald headed motherfucker. You know that I can't stand. It used to be on the original Brother Pill. You know what I'm talking about. Man Mindset. I can't even remember his name. But I called in one time and I was talking about, I'm concerned about, asset protection, stuff like that. And he was like, well, you're a bitch ass, da, da, da. And then you come to find out who he married, damn near taking care of his ass. Or at least he married a bitch walk away from him. She can't really tax him because she make more. The point is, you can't alpha your way out of divorce. You can't alpha your way out of that 80%. Because real talk, in a lot of people's minds, here's what's fucked up. And this is how fucked up it with a lot of the women you got to deal with. Most of these females really believe that the real alphas ain't married anyway. Most of these chicks really believe the most of the real alphas are in prison. And that ain't just the lowbrow chicks. That's facts. But my point is, as a man, if you get married, if I'm gonna tell a young dude, I'm not gonna. This is what I'm gonna tell a young dude, like, because there's a couple of 18, there's quite a few 18, 18 to 24 year olds that listen to me. I'll tell you real talk. I'm not saying to never take marriage off the table. It's like, never take it off the. Don't. I'm not gonna say never. Don't. I'm not saying to take it off the table. But the point is, it's not the same for women. Where women need to catch the chick, they need to catch immediately. Like catch the dude, they need to catch when they get them, because dudes ain't really running like that. The truth is, when you get in your 30s, when you can wait until you get either your late 20s, early 30s. You should not be thinking about marriage until if you under 26. You're insane. And anybody telling you that is trying to fuck you up. And everybody pretty much agree. Even black female matchmakers agree that black men shouldn't get married that early. Like, you shouldn't really be looking at marriage until like you 29 and then aiming for that shit till you 30, 31. Because truth be told, you really not even supposed to be marrying a female that's really your age. You're supposed to be marrying a chick that's younger than you. That's really the sweet spot. And even people that promote marriage agree to that. They agree to that. And truth be told, man, and I'm not trying to be an asshole about it, but cohabitation is cohabitation. The reality of the situation is, a lot of y'all, if y'all could get away with not marrying these chicks, and you know what your value is, and even if you have, look, I'm not telling you to have kids in single motherhood. See, what people don't understand is, it's not so much the single motherhood that's really what puts kids at risk. It's the lack of a father. Those are two completely different things. And it's just single motherhood and lack of fatherhood is synonymous with each other, because a lot of times you got females that are basically using kids as assets. So a lot of, because I know dudes that they're not technically married, but they are. When I say they're in the home. I know folks that are not married, but they cohabitate with the kids that they had. That happens a lot more. Now, it don't happen enough to where black women can use that to try to argue the single motherhood rate, but it happens enough. It happens. It happens more than what people think. And we all know that if a black woman really wants a dude to be in the house, she can choose a dude that's most likely to stay and not make it hard for that dude to stay. But long story short, it's not about that. My thing is, I just wanted to set the record straight on that, because it becomes like, what dudes are not invested in the fact, oh, black men, marry. Because I remember when BGS was BGS, Glendon, Erica, and even Kevin threw a thing in there. It was this thing about, are the marriage rates going up or going down in the black community? And it's always say, well, people are coupling up and all that. Yeah, when shit gets bad, people are gonna couple up. But here's the thing that people don't really address: the laws aren't changing. So the truth is, these women can sucker a nigga into getting married and then turn around and then pull no fault divorce. They can pull that ejectocito at any time. And so if you a dude and you get married and you don't protect against that, you're an idiot. And it's almost to the point where I'm gonna say, at this point, you almost deserve to get took. What, if you got money, you got some stuff to take, you need to get a prenup. Well, ain't no well. She don't love you. If she don't sign it, she don't love you. And Glendon said the perfect way as to how to get it. He said, you talk about the prenup, you basically allow for marriage for 6 months, like, as far as not necessarily engagement, but you let them give a breathing period. You pay $1,500 for a lawyer to look that over. You keep that, you do all of that. And if you scared, you should do black men, especially if you're a man of high demand, especially high value, but even high demand. If she don't want to, that should be a litmus test. That should be the final test. And if if they don't need to sign it under duress, if they don't want to get married, and I understand it's easy to say that, but then, the feelings and all of that, I get all of that. So I'm not even trying to act like that's easy, but dude, you need to let it go, because she's going to use that against you. And dudes have seen that too many times, and the divorce rate is way too high. I mean, I'm going to keep it all the way real. I'm going to say this. You're kind of an idiot if you believe in till death do us part in the modern world today. You need to start looking at marriage like a baseball contract or an NBA contract. You really need to start looking. Dudes really need, like, it needs to be like, I'm not saying to not get married, but you completely need to reevaluate how people view that. Now, people will say you should get married because of how you're viewed, because of networks, because of this, because of that. A lot of old world shit. Oh, and when I say old world, I'm talking about old money stuff. You know, if you depend on networks to build your wealth, which at some point there is a point where if you're building wealth, you might have to. The reality of the situation is now it becomes a cost benefit analysis. Now it becomes the risk of what you can gain with some supposed networks versus the L that you're probably going to inevitably take. And these conversations are never really had. It becomes a you either are for it, aren't for it. And shout out this stuff up. And what happens, bring it up. Make sure y'all get the likes up. When the stuff is dismissed. Because what you're doing is you're having conversations. See, part of the reason why it's easily dismissed is because you're having it with people that never married. See, in my opinion, I think it's harder if you had like black. This is why black men Bernard are important. Because because quite frankly, a lot of the advice that I got about getting married were from black men that were married, and these are from black men that if they wanted to cheat, they could. The women definitely didn't give a fuck about home wrecking. So this is not a. I didn't get my like people like some of my business mentors. Somebody these were not dudes, and they didn't necessarily. And most of them never said don't do it. They said to wait. It wasn't necessarily. It ain't dudes that were never married. And that's one thing that doesn't get said either. That there's a lot of black men that either are that not only were married but are married that say that. Like it's always seen as it's just niggas that aren't married. They are saying shit. Now that's true in the manosphere, but the reality is in real life, a lot of the dudes that I got a lot of this heat from were from dudes that were married. That really said talked because once you in it, I mean you get it. And this is not about saying marriage is bad, but marriage is only as good as the environment you're doing it. Now, obviously, if you're talking about like high money and high income, then it's different shit. But even then, that's to a certain extent. Even then, that's limited. Everybody ain't bouncing back like Jeff Bezos or Robert Smith. To be honest with you, one of the most devastating things that could happen to you financially is a divorce. And we're just talking about financially. We're not even talking about quality of life. But what happens is I just don't hear a lot of the art. I really don't hear enough really strong cases. I don't. You know, other than the network shit. Well, guess what? Every man ain't gonna be in no network like that. No economic network. Especially black men. And the reality is people will say, well, you know, those dudes really ain't shit. Well, guess what? You know, then you really saying 70% of the black community ain't shit. Essentially. And then what we're really saying is if you make in the top 20% or the top 10%, and then you ain't in these groups, you ain't shit. So it's like we're really talking about a niche market at that point. At that point, we're talking niche. And at that point, we're not even talking about the fact that a lot of those dudes are going to have a lot more women competing for them. So is it really something you can honestly call blackity black like that at that point? Because it's going to be so many gravitational pulls because money attracts money, especially if money attracts talent as well. And then when you hear some of the goofy shit that motherfuckers are say when you really press them on it, like I go back to Danielle when Danielle was on Bernard stuff for a brief bit. And she said, it's interesting because she's kind of like a representative in Congress, in my opinion, of the fuckery. And she's in the Congress, she's in Congress, and she's basically saying, well, women gonna do it, and they not gonna stop because you bitching about it. Well, this is why dudes don't even apply for it because it's like, okay, so all this bullshit, what is in it for me? And when nobody has a real answer for that, Because if we're gonna marry for networks, then what's the point of see? It's funny because it's like, okay, if you're gonna marry for networks and all the things that is advocated for marriage, then you got to start asking yourself, okay, now it starts to make sense why BGS talks about how a lot of these guys, these 92s and 100 guys, why a lot of them tend to get the same type of female, the Kamala Harris type. Now it makes sense as to why they do that. Because then you got to look at, okay, how is the wife an asset to me as far as my career and what I'm trying to do? See, nobody wants to really have that conversation. And that's why motherfuckers are so butthurt with the shit Kevin talks about. Because at the end of the day, even though he advocates for marriage, at the same time, it's a standard that he holds and that a lot of these women don't like. So anyway, I just wanted to make that clear because sometimes people when niggas call them, oh well, you for pump and dump. So how you for pump and dump, but you talk about single motherhood. Well, number one, pump and dump isn't about getting. But no, I don't know where people getting pump and dump and getting women pregnant from. I don't know where that came from. That's not what that means. That's not what that never meant that. But then now people want to make it mean that. Well, dudes should be just fucking to be wise. Well, first of all, if dudes have sexual access like that, those are not the niggas that get married like that. And even the dudes that do, like your pastors, they gonna date. Like if dudes that have dudes like, come on, man. Let's stop let's stop act like we don't know what the fucking world we live in. The same bitch that came up with the WAP video, the same bitch that was talking to the president. Let's stop pretending like we live in these separate worlds. Even like the Christian church is, I love that word worldly. The Christian church is worldly as fuck. It's very, I would say that only maybe 15, maybe less than 10% of the church is actually 100% legit. I'm talking about the body of people in there. The rest of them, half of them are more worldlier than motherfuckers that are actually outside the church a lot of the time. Anyway, all right, let's go through some of these real quick. What's up, Jim Rat, Pharaoh? Oh, I love this. Snitch, dude. You care enough to leave a chat. Said fuck pro marriage. I love dudes that come in here and they don't even know me and know what the fuck they talking about. Anyway, Soul Provider Speaks. Yeah, what's up, man? Y'all make sure y'all check out Soul Provider Speaks. I'm always interested. Like maybe we can do a stream one time. For real. Shout out to Soul Provider Speaks. I'll make sure I start sharing this channel more. Mm, Edward always triggered by pro marriage talk. Kevin is right when he said generally it does speak volumes about where people rank. I mean, at the end of the day, if y'all want, the black community is fluid. I mean, at the end of the day, if y'all want to pretend like every nigga makes 100,000, go ahead and do that. I'm not. Hey, that's you. If you want to do that, go ahead and do that. Look, I don't really give a shit what people do. And my thing is, this is what I've always said. I've always said that as an audience member, folks are accountable to what they choose to listen to, choose to internalize. So if folks want to sit here and go on the send off mission that is marriage because they think marriage is automatically gonna make them rich, because the way some of that stuff is promoted, that's how it's promoted. Go ahead and do it. Just like when people try to just like when niggas want to go ahead and fuck crazy bitches and think it's gonna be okay, go ahead and do it. If you want to go ahead and go on that run to that shit and act like everything gonna be okay and ignore everything, go ahead and do it. Be my guest. I'm tired. I believe in education and discipline by touching a hot stove. I'll tell you it's hot. You want to question me? Touch it. So I'm not going to be arguing back and forth, with people talking about, well, yeah, nigga, dudes that are married, because let's be clear here. Most of the black men that are married in the ADOS black community, most of them are on some submissive husband shit. Statistics have shown. So here's the thing. There's a difference between talking about, okay, let's be fair here and let's be clear. There's a difference between talking about like 92 octane dudes that are lawyers, doctors, professionals. I mean, not even white collar professionals, you know, like, and I ain't even talk about entrepreneur businessmen, but like businessmen, not the entrepreneur, the businessman, but you know what I'm talking about. There's a difference between that track. Okay, that's true for that track. But but what people what people are not really acknowledging is most black people are not, black men are not in that track. Just like if you actually look at what a high value man is, based on the metrics that Kevin said, that's like three. That's 1% of black men. In fact, I will make an argument. No, that's actually 0.5. That's like a half of a percent. Because when you talk about black men that's made that amount of money over time, like over 5 years, $10,000 a month over 5 years. That's probably we're just gonna call it. Let's call it 1.5% of all black men. That's it. That's 1.5. You only need 50 to get in the top like 25, a top 20. That's 1.5% of all black men. And honestly, it's less when you hit those metrics. Keep in mind, we're not talking about looks. And you know these hoes, if these dudes don't look good, they don't give a fuck. You can't be fat and be, even though you hit those metrics economically. Not for black women. So the thing about it is, it's 1.5%. If we're talking about those guys, I'd say two. You talk about 2 or 3%. Okay, if you're talking about those guys, if you're to take it all away, let's say it's 4%. You talk about 4%. 10,000 a month, 100 plus over that. You talk about 4%. Those professional careers that actually applies to. Yeah, like when you look at what that applies to, that's 4%. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, obviously folks are talking about the elite of the elite, but let's keep in mind what we're really talking about. Let's see. About that. We're not, because people have this thing about, oh, you could buy your way into that. Well, yeah, to a certain extent, but understand at that point you're talking about a niche market, and that makes sense for Kevin to talk about that because that's not his goal is not to be macro anyway. But when I come at it from the perspective, so that's where a lot of the rub kind of happens for me with a lot of what y'all talking about because y'all are talking as if y'all are talking about like remember what Kevin said. Kevin said that 70% of all women are gonna work regardless if they're married or not. You see you see what I'm saying? So it's the same thing flipped. So this idea of moving your way into networks and shit like that and having these careers, like having these professional careers. I mean, we're not even gonna talk about AI and talk about all that other shit. Like these tech niggas ain't getting married like that, like that. That was even talked about. So I mean, the thing about it, remember, only 33% of black men are married. And by the way, 33% of black. Keep in mind, 33% of black men are married, not were married, are married. So the reality is, this idea that the elite of the elite is all consolidated in folks that are married. If you're talking about a specific type of class of people, that might as well you might as well talk about a completely different community at that point. Then fine, but that's not the conversation I'm really having, and that's where really we go back and forth be about the marriage shit. Because it's not about me being triggered. It's like we're talking about we're talking about it as if like 33%. So in that 33%, you're essentially probably talking about maybe like out of that 33%, maybe like 7%, if that, of that 33%. And that's if that. I'm being nice with that. We're not talking about all the stepfatherism that still goes on and all that bullshit. All the niggas that are stepfathers and all the niggas that are blue collar workers. Like, come on. And another thing too that doesn't get said either is a lot of that network shit is designed to get to money. If you already have the money, That's a different type of thing. It really is. I mean, motherfuckers are talking like, they gonna be in like this like you can marry your way into bourgeoisie or some shit. But B, so essentially, are you saying 67% of black men are not married, and that number is not getting stronger? It's actually getting lower because a lot of that has to do with boomers and the silent generation really alive. So are you essentially telling me that 67% of the marriage populace of the black men ain't shit just by de facto they're not married? Is that really what you're saying? Because that's what it sounds like when you say, well, generally, useful guys want to get married. That's not true. So let's take Alan Roger Curry. Obviously, he's an exception, but let's take Alan Roger Curry, for example. He didn't want to get married until just recently. Like, let's say the last 3-4 years. So you saying he wasn't shit? This is the type of shit that people say. Like, for real. Like, because let's take the dudes that are in out of their 20s out of it, because they could still, quote unquote, want to get married. They're just not in that track. That doesn't make sense when you really say it. And that's kind of what I'm talking about. Like, what I'm talking about is this, like hell, if we gonna do that, we might as well just stop arguing with the females. Because if we're gonna have that kind of blind thought about it, like, well, yeah, niggas, if you don't want to get married, then you ain't shit. Oh, 80% no fault divorce, 80% they leave you, Ray. Like, I never forget that call where Kevin was about to cook. He said he was about to cook that chick because that dude told her straight up he wanted to court her, and then because she wanted to have money spent on her, she basically dated him for a year and a half. This dude's 37 years old. Look, I understand dudes don't hit the wall like women, but he ain't got time to be dating no 37 and he's 38 and a half because the bitch knew she wanted to be with him. You see what I'm saying? Like this ain't the 70s or the 60s. This is post 2000. This is post 80s. You're dealing with the babies that are children of the crack era. Crack baby minded women. These women don't like, and the truth is, a lot of these females don't want to be wives. That's real talk. And most black men are, for the most part, still marrying black women. Obviously, that number is going down, but it's not. But still, a lot of them are. So I mean, come on now. Hell, look at Shannon Brown. And I'm not trying to, this is not about me being anti-marriage, but look at what Monica is doing. You really think that Monica just came out of the blue and wanted to get C Murder out of jail? She was married to Shannon Brown. Like Shannon, like this, I'm not, again, if the best argument that somebody can have is if because most dudes are not really in the category of I don't ever want to get married. Most dudes are in the category of I'm not pressed to get married. And if the only thing that can be really said about that is, well, nigga, you must not be shit, then I question people's understanding of manhood. I really question that. Because are you really telling, because then at that point you might as well tell me you ain't a man unless you got a kid. Regardless if it's in a single mother home. Because that's the same logic. And B, that's like the best you can do. The best you can do is really tell me in like different ways, well, nigga, you ain't shit if you don't want to get married. And you must be a loser ass nigga if you don't want to get married. That's really what you keep coming at it. And that tends to be the sentiment that I hear. And what that's telling me, that there's really no real strong foundation for it if that's the only thing y'all can come up with. I mean, shit, BGS is basically put down fucking policy. Policy. And he got kids that are married. And he done put down policy on the shit as to where folks are going. In the Western world, now, and keep in mind, this is not a conversation. Well, if you want to be a lead athlete, understand something. So here's the question I want to know: which is more important, to be an elite dude, making money, or marriage? Which one's more important generally? That's what the fuck I want to know. That's what I want to know. Can you be an elite dude and your bitch make more than you? But you married though. I mean, and that's another thing, Kwame. And it like again, like at the end of the day, dudes are gonna do what they're gonna do. And my thing is, I don't really care. But what folks need to stop doing is say, well, y'all need to hush up because people, dudes want to couple up. I actually think that's a true statement. I actually think a lot of black men do want to couple up. I actually think a lot of black men do want to just go back in the blue pill and couple up. And they just want to say some red pill is on some bullshit, and they want to live in fairy tale land until the coast gets clear and your wife is got an OnlyFans account, or your wife is getting fucked by a white man, like in Africa, basically getting caught up in AIDS or whatever. Everybody wants to pretend that happens to other people, but that won't happen. Thing is, Kevin did one time where he said both of the women that the divorces happened, they ended up wanting to come back, and they ended up basically they got worldly on them. Basically, that's as far as I'm gonna go. They got worldly on them, and they basically realized that they fucked up. And the sad part about it is, when you look at somebody like him, the question I ask is, would they would have realized that they fucked up if he wouldn't have been able to withstand the blows that come from that? See, if he would have actually fell on the sword, if he would have actually succumbed to like the economics or whatever issues that come with divorce, they wouldn't be saying that. They would be like, it don't matter if I did it to him. Then the truth is, um, the fact that he couldn't overcome that says that I was right by doing what I did. Real talk. And these are things, and quite frankly, my personal opinion on it is black men need to go into marriage with very highly skeptical. You don't go into marriage. You don't go into marriage like on some like. There needs the business needs to go back into marriage. Too many black men go into marriage from a gynocentric standpoint, and I think we're more subject to that than even other groups of men. And you've seen how white men get cucked out. So you already know black men can get fucked over, and there is no real like if white dudes are not gonna get protected in this system, good and goddamn well they don't give a fuck about black men. The nameless protagonist says the love deflection is thrown so casually as a viable motivation to step on the bear trap. Yep. Genuine trucker tone says great discussion, brother. And so I appreciate that. Drunkard cat says I just do get it. If these women are so great, why do they need so many advocates? Their natural charm. Yeah, because I'm not 100% against marriage. Like I don't, I'm not at all. But at the same time, I think especially when I hear some young dudes talk about it, and to be fair, a lot of these dudes will tell them you need to work on your shit and then wait. I've heard Kevin say that, but it's my point is there needs to be a deeper discussion other than going into networks or like the thing that was said to step into another phase of life, because it seems like divorce is just another phase as well. And my thing is these laws need to fucking change. That's really where I stand with it. And if folks ain't serious about changing these fucking laws, then quite frankly, folks are not really serious. I didn't block anybody over opinions. What are you talking about? I've the only time I block people is when they start like heavy trolling. And another thing too, I don't hear enough about. Okay, we were talking about black men should get married. I don't hear enough about the supply and demand of what you need to go to get married as far as females. I don't hear enough intercultural dating. I don't hear enough, because motherfuckers act like that is equal. Solon Black said that. B said, here's the thing. If you're an advocate for marriage, the elitist approach is not going to work. You said, I want to know how well single dudes are doing. So are you really telling me you don't know dudes that are not married or have not been married that are successful? Is that what the fuck you really telling me? Because I know plenty of dudes that make over six, that make, like, maybe it's that I'm in the internet marketing industry, but I know plenty of dudes that are not married. Now, I don't know if they want to get married. And I know dudes in the internet marketing industry, they're very white, even non-black dudes that got married, got fucking divorced. So I mean, you're really CB. The real issue that I have with what you're talking about is you're using marriage as like a singular point as to say whether somebody's successful or not. You're making it like that's a very, very big indicator. And I'm not understanding as to why you're saying that. I don't get that, other than you just saying that's just the way it is. Maybe B is talking to somebody in the chat because I don't distort my points. I lay all my shit out here. So what you trying to say, B, is as soon as ARC got some money, that's when he decided to get married. Is that really what you trying to say? That's true. They should shame women for not being married. And you don't really see enough of that. You see the single motherhood shit. You're saying as soon as he got success, so you're basically saying throughout, hey, that's not true. And you said through his 40s. Hey, so but through his 40s is not being broke his whole life. No, but B, you imply that shit. Like, you keep saying never said. You don't have to say it. You imply it. You'd have to be a moron to not see that. You imply it like very loudly. You imply that if you ain't married, you must not be worth a damn. If you're not married or you don't want to be married, you must not be worth a damn. So basically, either you haven't been married, you don't want to be married, or you haven't been divorced. You must not be worth shit. Not really. I mean, you imply, I know I'm not the only one that hears that. Every quantifiable measure speaks to marriage increasing quality of life. Normally, that's actually not true. Actually, marriage has been shown to decrease the life expectancy of men. Every quantifiable metric indicates that women benefit. That is damn sure not true. And see, here's the problem. Here's the problem with those metrics. Those metrics weigh every man. So it makes sense. Understand something. You can't be broke. Like the way you look at that data is actually kind of fucked up, because you're not like, so let's say this. Let's look at people that do a specific job. Let's say Wall Street guys. And let's look at ones that are married or not married. Or let's look at plumbers. Or let's look at fucking motherfuckers that look at Walmart. But what they do is they tend to measure all men. So men that are in prison. So it automatically creates, like, they look at averages versus actual medians. So that data is always bent. It's always bent. It's always bent. I mean, B, you the one telling me to stop crying about single motherhood. See, the problem is I basically laid this thing out to be an understanding. You're the one that's trying to frame it like I'm trying to see. Once again, you're coming in here trying to frame it like you're the one that's getting bothered about this, not me. You're the one that's like, well, nigga, stop crying about single motherhood. Understand something, dude. I don't have kids. So you don't, so on 53% of black men don't have kids. So what are we talking about? And quite frankly, so you say stop crying about single motherhood. Black men don't control. Like, if black men had control over birth control, black men would never. You wouldn't have single motherhood. It wouldn't exist. So what are you talking about? Again, it becomes this throwing mud at the wall bullshit. I mean, AM1, absolutely. They do. And it's kind of like, and the thing, and here's the thing, just like how tricking, I love talking about tricking because of how it really is, it puts like a lot of black men in a hypnotic state. They can't like logically talk about it. It's the same thing with, or talk about somebody's mother. It's the same thing when it comes to this. It's like dudes, it's like logic starts, it's like talking about the fucking church. Dude, logic goes out the fucking window. And it's not necessarily like, let's not even talk about should a dude get married or not get married. Let's talk about what are the real benefits of marriage. And what I'm finding is when you really press that shit with other dudes, what you're talking about is plugging in the networks. Okay, well, I don't see a lot of dudes that have talent and a lot of dudes that actually are able to get shit done being discriminated against because of they're not married. Now, what I do see is the corporate America game, and I've seen that in the sales game. Yes, that is true. That can be a tiebreaker, and I will give y'all that marriage can be a tiebreaker. I'll give you that. I will absolutely give you the marriage can be a tiebreaker. That could definitely be a tiebreaker. That is one thing I will completely give to marriage. It can be a tiebreaker, but it's not gonna be the thing that's going. If you 5-10 points in front of somebody's gonna bring you up. It's not. You got to remember, man. We're talking about a world that's post gays are able to get married now. It's a different world. I didn't really mention single motherhood like that. No, and notice how, but Supreme Age, notice how I'm not saying that. Notice how I have not said really nothing disparaging. I have said nothing disparagingly, and I generally don't. You don't ever hear me say disparagingly shit about dudes that are married. You don't ever hear me say that shit. In fact, in my personal opinion, if part of my belief in group economics is that the black men that are married are the black men that are married to particularly black women are the black men that, quite frankly, you have to put up as far as where resources economically are going to be generated around. I mean, like if you come up with a project that is going to affect black people in a positive way, it really needs to go to those that have the most nuclear families. So that's my personal opinion. That's one of the foundational beliefs I have as far as black group economics. So you've never heard me talk, you've heard me talk shit about niggas that play stepdaddy because niggas that play stepdaddy are basically bargain basement shopping. But you've never heard me say nothing about a dude that's married just off the top of being married. So when I get all this heat, like I understand what people are saying in the chat, but I've never said that. I've never said, well, niggas that get married are fucking stupid. Obviously, they're doing something at their own risk, but I don't be hoping for shit to fail. Like even with, well, Russell Wilson's a stepdaddy, so that's different. So I don't be talking about, oh, but they get married because they simps, they get married because their manhood is worshiping. You don't hear me say that. Exactly, Carlton Banks. Well, B, you keep saying you're not saying get married. You're not saying stop speaking against it. Well, if marriage was such a strong foundation, then you shouldn't have a problem with people. Number one, it's not about speaking against it. It's about laying out the fucking facts. And as a black man that operates in logic, the fact that you even said that tells me that you don't believe you have a strong enough position. You really don't to even say that. Because if something, look, I don't like shit like the. If the shit was so strong, it wouldn't need to be argued. I've already said my biggest issue with marriage is the laws. The laws are fucked up. The laws are completely bent. And one thing that I don't ever hear dudes that really advocate for marriage do is really talk about why the laws is fucked up. I don't hear these niggas talking about if these laws get. I'm wondering what these black fucking Republicans and black conservatives are talking about. Where is marriage reform in the RNC platform? Since the Republican National Committee is so not racist, hell, Trump has been married 3 fucking times. Shit, where is the fucking marriage reform? Where is fucking updating that shit? Just like these bitches need to get paid the same as men, they need to be caught up with how equal the shit is. I don't hear that, and that's a big problem. That's one thing I do have. It's like everybody's, oh, well, it's okay. So it's really low key, you're part of the game. Because y'all see these numbers like we do. And that's the problem. Most men are not pressed. Most men are not anti-marriage. They're not pressed. And like what I'm saying, here's the thing. What you're really saying is don't speak against it because you're going to convince dudes, you're going to bring reality to dudes that already kind of low-key feel this way. So we need to keep everything quiet. Well, I can say that same thing about stepfatherhood. I can say that same thing about anything that our women benefit from. We are in a fucking gynocracy. So by default, our women have an absolute advantage over us. Fuck single motherhood. You can see the gynocracy even in marriage. How many black men, and we're not we're not talking about how the folks that Kevin's talking about. You know what? Let's be absolutely clear here. If you a Kevin, if you a high value man, or you're one of those hit squad dudes, I'm not talking about you. Because this isn't about that. Because when you're married like that, you got leverage and you're looking. Dudes that are married like that have a different criteria that they're holding people accountable to. So I'm not even going to sweat that much. So we're not talking about the people Kevin is talking about. Because Kevin's talking about a certain group of men. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about everybody else. We're talking about the rest of the... I'll give Kevin 10% of all the men. So we're talking about the top 10%. That incorporates all the dudes that are high value, the dudes that are on the way, and the dudes that are potential. They just need to get a couple of other those metrics. Top 10%. Now I'm talking about 90% of everybody else. So if you talk about from the top 60% to that 90%, so that 30%, that's who the fuck I'm talking about. Those dudes that could be on their way, child support, that's what I'm talking about. He said, bro, can you quantify so many quality of life measures that indicate usefulness of marriage for men and women? There's reason black are the least married and at the bottom. Okay, here's the truth. The truth is, black, when you go back in the 60s, okay, here's the truth. When you go back in the 60s, when black men back in the 60s and pre-60s, when black people were the most married, we were still at the bottom. Or at least we were like third and fourth. So marriage has, I just basically proved that from an overall black community standpoint, marriage actually doesn't have that big of an effect. Not over economics. Great money equals marriage. Yeah, but you single dudes ain't making no money anyway. I mean, so B, you just said it. B, you just said it. See, that's what I'm saying. So it's funny, like you said that, oh, well, I'm not saying that niggas ain't shit that ain't married. But you keep saying you single dudes ain't making no money. Do you realize that, like, how much of the wealth do you think, dude, how much of the wealth do you think is encapsulated? How much of black wealth do you actually, black male wealth, do you actually believe is encapsulated in that 33%? Do you really believe that it is that big of a difference? Like, how much, okay, so let's talk about the average income of somebody that's married versus somebody that's not married. Okay, I'll give you that the average income is probably higher, but the truth is, how big of a gap do you think that is? I'll tell you what. The truth is that a dude that is a homosexual occupies a bigger income gap. A black man that's a homosexual occupies a much bigger income gap to a heterosexual black man. Homosexual black man, hetero black man, than a black man that's married. See, this is what, and see, you saying this is not what you saying, but then you say it. Like, you act like I haven't heard you talk about this before. You said it. I mean, that's what you believe, and I would just stand on it. You believe that niggas that ain't married or don't want to get married are broke. Which, by the way, is a Nicole Michelle argument. That is what, nigga, that's the argument that these damn level up bitches make. That's the same argument. And the thing about it is, you got me questioning, do you even hang around single dudes? Who the fuck are you talking about? Because by definition, if you're eligible for marriage, you gotta have money. So it's not like you're not single. And remember, only 33% of black men are married. Hell, by the way, how many of your females are not married but they making buku money? Like, let's flip that for a second. So we talk about men, but how many of the females are not married but they making six figures, but they can't get a man? So what are we talking about? So are you really saying that you need a bitch to have money? me see who's in the super chat. I wish I would have put this on so I could bring people on. B, but if the data leans towards pro marriage, isn't the burden of proof on you to show marriage? Okay, I mean the data. I already told you the data is bent. The data is bent because it's averaging out. You got to understand, like the way the data is really said. The data doesn't get specific on certain certain like occupations. It basically says people that are married aren't, because what it's trying, because most of that data is really rotated around talking about class of people. This is why they talk about educated versus non-educated. Because non-educated, there's a lot of other factors that will be put in there. But I mean, the way you present it is you're presenting it that if black men got married, then that would solve most of the problems that the black community had. If black men just marry black women, black men would be more successful. That's how you really are kind of framing it. And you haven't said nothing really. The only thing, that's all you're saying. All you're saying is if black men just get married, everything else will be taken care of. Because there's nothing even deeper that you're saying than that. And then you keep on reflecting it by saying niggas are broke that aren't married or they don't want to get married. As if divorce, you make it sound like that, a lot of niggas are broke because of divorce. You make it sound like most black men that have been married are sick. Like that makes no sense what you're talking about. Because then let's look at the statistics of how long most marriages actually last, which really means most marriages don't get out of 10 years. Most don't get out of 5. So what are we really arguing about is black men that have been married, which is never how it's presented, because it would have you believe that there's not an economic cost. And again, if the argument is, fuck everything I'm saying. Everything I'm saying is I'm a loser ass nigga. So black men, just get married. Don't vet these bitches, just get married. Find the nearest bitch and get married. In fact, find an ugly bitch, even though ugly bitch will play your ass too, and get married. And then economics will handle itself. Because 2 incomes are better than 1. That's the only financial strategy you niggas need is to get married. Just get married and everything else is straight. Damn, I just found that out. I just learned that. Fuck a college education, just get married. Fuck financial intelligence, just get married. That's your problem. That's what I'm gonna start saying from now on. If a nigga ain't married, nigga, you broke. You poor. Nigga, you poor. Shut up, you poor. That's what I'm gonna start saying. I must be poor too. Every nigga that's not married, so only 30% of black men are poor. Fuck it. The manosphere, we just need to preach marriage, because that's the solution, guys. Getting married. Find a bitch, any bitch. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Marriage, and I'm not, marriage is like 50% of the problem. The problem you niggas have is you niggas weren't married. And you think I'm fucking lying. I'm gonna start saying that shit and see how dudes react to it. Dude. Like, number one, just because who said I was single? Just because you're married, you're not married doesn't mean you're single. What does that mean? Angry Man has a whole audience full of dudes that are in relationships and not necessarily married. What are you talking about? I mean, dude, you make it sound like everybody in this chat is like never on some MGTOW shit. Most black men in the manosphere are not MGTOW. I don't get what the fuck you're talking about. Most black men are not MGTOW. Even SYSBM doesn't preach anti-marriage. I just said that. You kind of see the problem is what you want me to do is go out there and do what I just did and start caping for marriage. That's a different thing. See, my philosophy, I've already said, if you're gonna get married and you really sure that's what you want to do, I've always said, nigga, you need to make sure you got a gap between you and that female. Meaning, I do not recommend you get married. I don't recommend you get married with a female that's older than you. I don't recommend you get married with a female that is less than you. She better be greater than 3 years younger, really greater than 4. Really, it should be 5. And that shit is from expert matchmakers. You need to get a prenup if you got assets, and if you ain't got enough assets to get a prenup, you really shouldn't get married, in my opinion. If you a guy in your 20s, talk about you want to get married, if you ain't got nothing to lose, then you shouldn't get married. And if you do, you shouldn't get married yet. Everything that I said before we start going back and forth, B, has really been predicated on getting married yet. It hasn't. You've never heard me to say not get married. But see, the problem is you interpret anything that is not for you as against you. And that's how black women operate. Black women say, well, if you're not kissing my ass, then you must be against me. That's some Sith Lord shit. I mean, I don't care what they put in the chat. I'm talking about what I'm saying. Exactly, Jim Rat. Stack your money up. You 25. So you on your way. And Phoenix, if you in Phoenix, Phoenix is Phoenix is 5th largest city in the United States now. It just passed Philly. And the way it's going, it might catch up to fucking Houston. Phoenix is moving. Like, think about it. Like, I'm 33. And the dude that he mentioned, like, because that was interesting, because Kevin said that dude was 37. I'm 33 now. And there's not a lot we actually disagree with. And most people are like, only really Ramil was preaching against marriage. But even Ramil don't be jumping on people to actually get married. Gabe A comes there all the time. So it's like kind of like you be taking it like to a place that I didn't even want to take it. So it makes it sound like, oh, this nigga's against marriage. No. Like, and here's let's talk the truth. Fuck the broke shit. Let's really go into the broke shit. Let's go into the broke shit. Here's the truth. Broke niggas get pussy too. By the way, a lot of these dudes are getting a lot of these dudes' wives are getting fucked by broke niggas. At least that's what's going on with the white boys. A lot of these niggas, like, people act like broke. Nigga, why you think these bitches are talking about leveling up? Because they gotta level up from something. See, there's a difference between the high value man and the in demand man. In demand man is just how much these bitches want to fuck. And you see how goofy they get when they call in. So let's keep this all the way 100. Like, this idea that, like, come on, man, because we all know in the black community, money don't make everything. Because remember, before I was listening to Kevin, I was listening to Jason Black. And Jason Black used to say something, the same shit. Guess what? Jason Black ain't married, and he a millionaire. Boyce Watkins wasn't married for the longest time, and he a millionaire. I'm obviously, man, we can play tit for tat, but my point is, Jason, like, all this shit you talking, for some reason, as much shit game as Jason Black got, he ain't figured that out yet. Anyway. Well, I mean, I don't understand. Maybe it's because maybe it's because I'm an entrepreneur, but I don't understand the logic of if you make 120 k, because understand that, nigga, you don't gotta make that kind of money to fuck these bitches. I don't understand that. A lot of these chicks want to be in the streets until they 50 anyway. So I'm not getting where the value add of marriage is. And even here's the thing: if I actually wanted to say why you should get married, I could do a much better job of selling it. You literally just said, well, Boyce says if you make 120,000, these niggas will wipe up a 7. So what you're really essentially telling me is them niggas couldn't get a 7 until they got married. They couldn't get a 7 until they got that kind of money, and that's called tricking. We talk, well, they get a 7 in a minute. Why? Why? What's the value add? Because keep in mind, when we talk about get a seven, we're talking about get a seven, no prenup. Where's the value at? Where is the actual value add that woman gives if you make 120 already? What is she really valuing? Because if you say she's a seven, okay, we're talking about her looks. We're not talking about anything else she brings. Like a lot of that is that's babble, man. Like I've yet to see y'all make a real argument other than the network argument. And most black men are actually not in corporate America like that. Anyway, I'm done. I'm wasting this whole thing going back and forth with you. Dude, don't make me do screenshots because you really tried. Dude, don't make me do screenshots. Come on, man. You really gonna make me do screenshots? I hate when people say I'm putting words in their mouth and they literally type this shit out. You literally said, so you niggas broke. You single niggas are broke anyway.
Alan, can you get this off?
I mean, my thing, Rael, like I said, I'm gonna tell you, like I told B. I don't know where you niggas act like you all are aggregating wealth, like with you talk about in the area where wealth is aggregated. Black men are not gaining wealth the same way as non-black men. You're talking like we're going into the country club doing a debutante pageant like like Donald Trump, like that's not what's going on. Like y'all are kind of that's not how most of these black men are getting money. It's not. That's not what's going on necessarily. And I'm not gonna talk about the niggas I know and turn it into a tit for tat. But if that's the best argument you got, okay, that again, I said take off of niggas that already make like are on the take off black men. Let's be clear here. Only like 5% of black men are making like 80,000 dollars or more. So we're talking about the rest of the 95% of black men. So you all essentially saying 95% of black men are all broke. Is that essentially what you all are saying? That's what I'm asking, Rael. Because I keep coming to that wealth generation shit that's like 50% of black men. Only like 5% of black men are actually in that category to even begin to have that conversation. I mean, I'm telling you. I mean, y'all talking about, but y'all are not talking about. Y'all talk about a niche part of black men. And marriage is supposed to be a universal thing. You're not supposed to talk about, see, what the argument you all are essentially making is marriage is for the elite. Everything you all are making is about marriage as far as containing the elite of anybody. And okay, that's true, but marriage was not supposed to be just for the elite, at least not in America. So again, what you all are essentially telling me, that outside of the top 10% of black men, marriage really ain't for you. That's really essentially what you all are saying. Well, they have a healthy view of marriage because what is Rael? What is a healthy view of marriage? What the fuck does that mean? Y'all niggas gonna make me do another stream and then basically bring some of y'all up, because y'all are basically, a lot of y'all motherfuckers be talking reckless, but y'all don't be ever really wanting to come up. Like, what are you talking about? Like I think I have a healthy view of marriage. But I guess a healthy view of marriage is defined as, no matter what, you should just do it for love, right? It don't matter. Everything I said, fuck that, just do it. Broke five broke, we ain't got it. Appreciate it. Salute to Edward for dropping jewels. And Big Poke and Tank Man Clan Killer. And what's crazy is we are in 2020 with the crop of females we got, and y'all talking that shit. That's what's crazy. And this is how I know a lot of y'all niggas would be stepfathers. A lot of y'all niggas are open to that step. Because if y'all think like this, y'all niggas will be open to stepfatherhood. Like, real fucking talk. No, I'm not trolling. I'm asking you. No, I'm not. I mean that statement, B. You said I'm asking you, what is the value? I'm asking you. And the only thing y'all really giving me is shaming language. That's the only thing y'all really giving me. Y'all ain't really giving me nothing. If we actually map it out, man, nigga, okay, you really gonna make me fucking get Ramil and get fucking Bernard, and we have a stream mapping this bullshit out. You really gonna make me do that? Because you remember, I used to go back and forth with BGS when BGS is not married, but I used to go back and forth with BGS about that. You ain't mature until you have a kid shit. Well, Zero, the problem is that they're trying to frame it that any nigga that don't want to get married is really a loser. They really want to frame it like niggas that don't want to get married is on some Peter Pan syndrome. And I really said, Zero, that most black men are not so much anti-marriage. They're just not pressed to get married. Most of them are not saying, if you ask a black man, like, do you believe in marriage? Most of them are not going to say, I'm talking about on the street. And in the manosphere too, most of them are not going to say, I will never get married. That's not where most black men are. And as far as coupling up doesn't necessarily mean get married either. A lot of black men will play the cohabitation game with a bitch as long as she lets them. And a lot of females will let them because a lot of women don't low-key really want to get married. That's why they play the perfect nigga syndrome. Man, and I said I was going to... You niggas gonna make me open up a panel. You know what? Fuck it.